I'm Joey.
I'm Taylor.
I'm Joelle.
I'm Carey.
And this is our Com 270 movie review. Our movie was Glory Road. We'll each be covering a couple of points about the film. My 2 points were hegemonic masculinity and stacking.
My 2 points were ethnicity and politics.
My 2 points were disability and race.
And my 2 points were whiteness and nationality.
Well, we hope you enjoy our video. Thank you so much.
The 2 topics that I covered were ethnicity and politics. Ethnicity is something that can show one's culture and heritage, their family background. In Glory Road, this is seen quite a bit. In the beginning of the movie, Don Haskins is traveling to New York to recruit players. He goes to Harry Florney's house and talks with his mother. At one point, Harry's mother said, "We're church people around here. Are you Haskins?" This shows a part of Harry and his mother's ethnicity by showing that religion is a part of his family's culture and background. Another example of ethnicity is shown when the black athletes arrive in El Paso, Texas. One player said, "Just smile at them and say howdy. And now you gotta say hola." It means hello, Puerto Ricans. This may be a false sense of ethnicity of the residents of El Paso, but it is what the new students believe when they arrive based off the language spoken in El Paso. During this part of the movie, while they are arriving, they are also playing mariachi music to show the ethnicity and culture of El Paso. There's also some insight of politics throughout the movie. We see this in the intro when we hear MLK say, "I have a dream." There's also a moment where Don Haskins visits the basketball arena, and during this short scene, an American flag is seen over 3 times in the background. However, when we fast forward to the championship game later, the focus is not on the American flag. This time, the focus is on the Kentucky fans, who are shown holding and waving the Confederate flag in the background of the game. When looking further into the representation of the Confederate flag, we can see that this may not only be a subtle display of politics, but an overt example of intersectionality of race and politics. The Confederate flag to many is a representation of the South's views during the Civil War, which didn't exactly represent racial equality. In fact, possibly the exact opposite. It is possible that Kentucky fans use this political accessory because of the racial divide between their team and their team of white athletes versus Texas Western's black team.
Well, my 2 points for Glory Road were both whiteness and nationality. And the definition of whiteness is the fact or state of belonging to a human group having light-colored skin. And I think that that's one of the biggest things throughout the entire movie, especially the overall theme of just black players playing college basketball in the 1960s was not common at the time, and that group did not have as many black players in it and was more like colored skinned people. And I think one of the things that fits in a theme is when Nevin Shedd is assaulted in the bathroom, just because he is a black basketball player, and it's the whiteness through that. It's not belonging to that group at the time. And I think it compares in the film Blue Chips as well, in the scene where Shaq walks into the room. He goes to visit his coach's wife to get counseling and tutoring for his classes, and he walks into a class of little first graders, and they look at him pretty weird. So I think that also can fit into the whiteness of the situation. And the second point I had is nationality. During the recruiting process, the players were mostly from urban areas such as like New York and Chicago, and they would move to El Paso, Texas, which is a pretty big culture shock. And especially the scene when they're on the bus going to the campus. The Hispanic population looks at the players differently in a puzzled way because they're not used to the players, those type of people being here and being in that part of the country. And it also crosses over into the movie Blue Chips as well because they go to Algiers and Algeria and recruit players, and they're also looked differently. And players are also doing that at all times. The intersectionality that I had for mine is ethnicity and race, and I think the ethnicity and race intersectionality in the movie is one of the biggest ones. And one of the scenes I think it plays big is in the scene where Mo Iba, the white basketball player on the team, starts dancing at the party, and in the background, Iva's expressing his ethnicity and background in a different way, and he's showing that he's more in tune with maybe some of the black players and maybe other white players in the country aren't. And Then another scene that shows the intersectionality between ethnicity and race is the players when they walk into the bar. They walk in very nicely dressed suits, and they're expressing their race through that. And it crosses over with the ethnicity of the Hispanic people in the bar. Their dress is more laid back, and they're more laid back clothing compared to the black players that walk in and they're very well dressed. Yeah.
In the movie, one of the players, Willie Cager, ended up getting diagnosed with a heart condition towards the end of the season. This caused him to have a minor setback, and he was benched for 1 to 2 games. His mom had to come up and plead his case with the coach on why he should keep playing. The main agreement for him being down here was that he was able to play basketball and continue his education. This was a chance for him to play basketball and get a higher education and potentially earn him a chance to play at a higher level like the NBA. He was able to come back and play, and even though his heart condition was at a greater risk, it was worth it for him because this was the goal. This part of the movie allowed viewers to think about how we see athletes when it comes to the social norm. The social model for athletes is that they are expected to be healthy, and when most fans think of health conditions, we think about physical aspects and not something like a heart condition. Like many of the other African Americans on the team, they relied on their bodies to help them continue playing basketball so they can stay in college and get an education and move out of their environment. Most of the players that were African American had their families that they had to rely on and help them feel more safe for them coming down here. Like most of the mothers, when the coach first came to them, the mothers were relying on this chance being them to get them out of their environment and having them play in the league. This reminds me of the movie Friday Night Lights. The main character, Booby, relied on his talents in football so he can go to the NFL. He was a top recruit, and he knew that this was possible for him. And in one of his games, he tore his ACL, and it was a life-changing injury, and he had to think of a plan B, but he never had to think about this, so he didn't know what else was going to happen. Unlike our character in Glory Road, Booby wasn't able to come back from his injury, and he wasn't allowed to get a second chance. Both characters had to think about how this was going to affect their families, and they had to use their bodies to get them to the higher level, and race was a big part of this.
My 2 points for the film Glory Road were hegemonic masculinity and stacking. Hegemonic masculinity is defined as a practice that legitimizes men's dominant position in society and justifies the subordination of the common male population and women. Don Haskins is the head coach of the Texas Western Miners in Glory Road, and he exemplifies the definition of hegemonic masculinity. Nick Trujillo identifies 5 elements in how media constructs this, and he uses sport as a primary example. The 5 points were physical force, occupational achievement, familial patriarchy, frontiersmanship, and heterosexuality. Haskins is seen using physical force throughout the film. He's seen grabbing and pushing players and kind of asserting his dominance since he is the head coach. Occupational achievement, Haskins was a girls basketball coach before he became a D1 basketball coach, and kind of views being a girls basketball coach as inferior, at least that's how the film depicts it. Familial patriarchy, Haskins is the clear patriarch of his family. Later on in the film, his wife discusses how she never really wanted to move to El Paso, and she basically he forced her to move there. This shows that he was really in charge. While she ends up coming around to it and is fine with living in El Paso by the end of the film, at the same time it shows that she never really had a choice in the matter. And frontiersmanship, Haskins ends up becoming kind of a pioneer in college basketball. He is the first, pretty much the first team in the South to have an all-black starting lineup, which was unheard of at the time, especially in the South. And heterosexuality, Haskins is of course married to a person that identifies as a woman, and he has 2 biological children with her, which shows his heterosexuality to the audience. My second definition was stacking. Stacking, according to Billings, Butterworth, and Terman, relates to the placement of people in roles which closely fit social expectations of identity groups. This has evolved over time, particularly in basketball. Basketball used to be a predominantly white sport, and now, of course, in the professional levels, more of a predominantly black sport. The lunchroom scene, the players kind of talk about, they all want to be forward. They go from forward, starting forward. In the game, Haskins typically plays black players at the forward position due to their style of play being, more well suited for the position. The white players are kind of moved to defensive positions, and at the end, he ends up starting on the whole starting 5 for black players. This demonstrates stacking at the forward position. And finally, for my intersectionality demonstration, I would like to talk about the scene at the bar between basketball player Bobby Joe and Tina. who he meets at the bar. This demonstrates intersectionality between sexuality and race. Bobby Joe demonstrates his heterosexuality by flirting with Tina and introducing himself at the bar. Tina says, to quote her, "I'm not going to fall for that smooth-talking Negro routine," and that her mama warned her about it. This shows two people who are black, which covers race of intersectionality. And then Tina mentions, in passing, her black sexuality by talking about the smooth-talking routine. Bobby Joe expresses his sexuality by expressing his interest in Tina. And over the course of the film, of course, the two start dating, and then in the credits, it's revealed that they end up getting married. And this shows the audience intersectionality between race and sexuality.
Hi.